Alright, y'all, so today we're going to be talking about ratio technique Kento Nanami, right? So of course we're going to be going over everything, skill level priority, synergies, and memories. So right now we have him evaluated at an A. He is an SSR mono green attacker character. So let's start off with the skill level priorities and then we'll move on to the synergies right after. So the first skill that we're going to prioritize first is going to be the curse technique disclosure. So this is going to be his first skill, right? The reason why we're going to be using this skill is because it's his buffing skill and it increases his own crit hit rate by 50% for 4 turns and his own break damage by 50% for 4 turns. Very good overall, and it lasts for quite some time, and it's very low cost in curse energy usage. It's only 10, literally only 10 for that buff. Now that's at level 1. At level 10, it's an 83% for both of them rather than 50%, which is good. So I feel like you should be upgrading this first because you're going to be using it very often, especially since it's only 10 cursed energy. It's very easy to use. You can use it practically every turn, no matter what, just because it's only 10 cursed energy, unless you fight an enemy who reduces your cursed energy, then it's a different story. So you're definitely going to want to upgrade this first. It's going to increase his overall total damage output, so you definitely want that upgraded. Next up, we're going to be talking about the next skill that we want to prioritize, and that's going to be his ultimate, which is Ratio Technique Collapse. This is going to deal ranged combined damage equal to 240% taijutsu and 240% jutsu damage to all enemies. So it's an AoE attack, and then at level 10, it will deal 477% taijutsu and 477% jutsu damage to all enemies. So you do a decent amount of damage. It's going to be like 900% in total. Not if you add them, obviously, but like you get what I'm saying, right? So overall, you're going to want to be increasing that because that's going to be his damage. His damage is literally his ult. Good AoE ult, not bad at all. Very powerful, especially if you get him paired up with some buffers and debuffers to do some more damage. He's definitely going to be able to nuke enemies. He's definitely going to be that one green character who's an AoE that you can use in the beginning. Like if you're trying to get past some bosses and you're doing some nukings, stuff like that, and there's groups, he's going to be able to do it because he's an AoE. And now we have his next skill, which is going to be Ratio Technique. This one does quite a bit of damage. So it deals melee damage 124% and jujutsu damage 124% to the enemy. But then at level 10, you'll be able to do 211% jujutsu and then 211% taijutsu to the selected enemy. So it does quite a bit of damage, as you can see there, just from like a normal attack. It's almost as high as Gojo's skill 1, like his normal attack. So not bad at all. The only issue is, of course, it costs 30 cursed energy to actually use this, which kind of sucks, but I still would prioritize it over his normal attack, which is literally going to be the last one that we're talking about. That one deals 50% taijutsu and 50% jujutsu damage to the selected enemy at level 1, and then 75% jujutsu and taijutsu damage to the selected enemy at level 10. So it's okay, right? Realistically, that's definitely going to be the last one of your priorities. Not going to do a crazy amount of damage, and you're not going to notice the difference. So these are going to be the priorities of your skills. I don't think anybody should disagree with this because this is OP, and then his ultimate is what you're trying to aim for anyways. Next up, we have synergies. First character we have here is Gojo. So if you're familiar with how Gojo works, Gojo leaves the battle after 7 turns, and then, yeah, he's no longer there. That works in favor of Nanami, who then starts buffing himself after the 9th turn of his passive skill. His passive skill is overtime work. So at the start of the 9th turn from the start of battle, recovers own cursed energy by 30, fills his own ultimate skill gauge by 200, and increases his own jujutsu damage by 30. So, like, naturally, you're going to want him with Gojo because once Gojo leaves, like, if he leaves, right? Like, if you beat the stage before he leaves, good for you. But if he doesn't, when he leaves the stage, you can have Nanami as your backup character. And once the 9th turn starts, boom, you're going to have overtime active and you're going to do so much more damage. You're going to get all this cursed energy. You're going to get all your ultimate skill gauge. He's basically a stand-in for Gojo when Gojo's not there. And I really like how that plays in because to me, it kind of feels like when Gojo picked up Yuji, right? And then he was like, he's basically his teacher or whatever, I guess, in a sense. And then he started working with Nanami instead right after. So I just that's the kind of feeling that I got from it. It's like, okay, well, once Gojo dips, you know, Nanami's here to stand in and take care of all the work Gojo left behind. Easy clap, right? So that's kind of how I feel with the character, and I feel like they kind of synergize well since the only turn that you'll have like a dead turn is literally like turn 8. Once turn 9 starts, boom, you're good to go. You're going to have Nanami drop in with all those buffs. Very nice. Next up, you have the next synergy, which is going to be Yuji Itadori. So as you know, Itadori can Black Flash. He's a DPS character. Nanami can also Black Flash. I really can't say that they don't work good with each other. They're both green characters, so you can both use them as DPSs. Still a good character. They're going to synergize well with both being able to increase their own Black Flash once they Black Flash. So, good characters. Next up, we have Inumaki. So Inumaki's main goal here is to increase the amount of damage you can do to a selected enemy. So it's a debuff on the enemy. And then on top of that, he can protect one of your teammates from dying. So that does help Nanami in his case, where he has to last at least 9 turns to finally be able to get his buff going from his passive. And then Inumaki is also debuffing the enemies, which allows Nanami to do even more damage. So you can't really go wrong with that. And he has really good break for Nanami to be able to do more damage. Because him and Nanami, they'll both be increasing their break damage, so they will be able to possibly break the enemy fairly quickly together, on top of the fact that he will be doing a lot of damage to the enemy with all the crits and everything, and the Black Flashes. So I really think these characters are really good to each other in the beginning, and then later on as Inumaki falls off and Nanami falls off, then you probably won't be using them anymore. Alright, so what we have next up is Yaga. You can ignore this. This is just kind of like what I was using for a lot of my sheets, this image. So this Nanami, pay no mind to it. You can't use 2 of the same characters on the same team. So we're talking about Yaga here. He's able to buff your team's Jujutsu and Taijutsu damage, and considering the fact that Nanami utilizes both, it's going to be very nice for him. He's going to be able to output tremendous amounts of damage. Overall, I mean, I can't really say anything else about it. Yaga is just that guy, so you're going to be using him on a lot of teams. So, of course, if you have a carry, he's going to be there, and he's going to synergize with him because, of course, he is a carry. So not much to talk about that. Let's move on to the memories. Of course, the memories, based on what memories you use, can kind of change how you build the character and what situations you might need them for. So we're going to give you like the recommended rundown of memories that you're going to be using in most cases with this character. Just keep in mind when I do point out these 4 memories that I have here, there is going to be other memories, of course, in the game that are going to be useful for him, of course, naturally, right? But we're going to be talking about the ones, like I said, that are going to be usually the best for him and most recommended based on the situations, right? So the first one that we have here is Adult Time. And what Adult Time does is you activate it with the use of your skills or ultimate skills, and it increases your own damage dealt by 70%. So most of the time you're going to be using it with your ultimate skill, so that way you can get as much damage as possible with your ultimate. On top of that, its passive is when a crit hit is performed, increases all allies' crit hit rate by 10% for 2 turns. Keep in mind, you have to have at least 1 limit break into the memory to unlock this passive, but it's good, really, really good for him because he's able to increase his own crit. And then, of course, if you do have him paired up with other characters who can increase his crit, then you can do even more damage. Like, for example, characters like Todo, who can increase the crit of himself and the person behind him. So you put Nanami behind him, then he'll be able to do more damage because he has Taijutsu built also inside his kit. And he'll be able to crit with his own buffs, and then you'll also get even more crit with your actual passive from the memory. You'll be able to provide crit buff for your entire team very frequently and for a very good duration, which is 2 turns, right? So not a bad memory for him. I actually really like this one. Next up, we are going to be moving on to the next memory. That memory is going to be Cleaning Duty. And Cleaning Duty isn't bad whatsoever either. It does give you a good amount of damage for a long duration. So when the command skill is activated, so you have to use it with one of your skills, it will increase own Taijutsu damage and Jujutsu damage by 30% for 3 turns. And considering the fact that he utilizes both in a lot of his attacks, Jujutsu and Taijutsu, this is definitely going to be very beneficial for him. And then the cooldown is 8 turns. Then you have the passive effect once you get 1 limit break on it, which is at the start of battle, increases own damage dealt by 20%. The more Tokyo Jujutsu High students there are at the start of the wave, the higher the damage they'll increase. There's going to be a lot of Jujutsu High characters on your team because a lot of them are really good. So you're going to be using a big portion of them but they have to be students. Keep in mind, they have to be students. So characters like Gojo and them, they don't count. They don't factor in. You will be getting that good damage output. Like if you use a character like Inumaki, you're going to get that effect, all that good stuff. So for Panda, you're going to get that effect. Good, you know? So the more people that you have in your team that are from that same, tag, you're going to get more damage. Not bad, right? And that's at the start of the battle, and it doesn't have any cooldowns or turns, so it seems to be permanent. So overall, really good. Boom. Now we move on to the next memory. This next memory we're going to talk about, of course, if you don't know what it is already, it's one of the most powerful physical memories out there. Like you literally cannot complain about this memory whatsoever. It's so strong, especially for Nanami. It's going to be called the Fraternal Bond. And what it does is you activate it when you use your ultimate skill, and then it will increase your own taijutsu damage by 80%. So keep in mind, when you use his ult does taijutsu and jujutsu damage, so it's not like he's not benefiting off of it. He will be benefiting from it. But then his passive, when you limit break it at least one time, this is where it starts to get crazy for him. When a crit hit is performed, fills own ultimate skill gauge by 200. That right there, that passive alone is so powerful. Like you don't even know. Especially when his first passive literally gives him crit rate. And then if you use a character like Todo in front of him, and then Todo activates his ultimate, he will give him 40% even more crit rate. So he's definitely going to be critting very frequently. You're not going to have any problems critting. You're going to be getting your ultimate skill gauge super fast with this, literally. So I think it's really good on him. Of course, keep in mind, like I said, it's only taijutsu damage buff. So there's going to be other ones that are a little bit better because they increase for both. But for him personally, I still think this is very powerful regardless. Really can't go wrong with this. I don't rate any of these higher than each other. I feel like they're all pretty good for him. Next up, let's move on with the SR memory, because of course, naturally, we have to have a free-to-play accessible memory in there just in case. So, you know, if you don't have the SR memories, you got an option still. So the memory is called Unequally, and when a command skill or ultimate skill is activated, increases own break damage by 60%. So this gives you a little bit more break capability. Keep in mind, of course, his buff from his skill 2 does give him a little bit more break, and it gives him more crit. So this is definitely going to be very nice as well. You are going to be able to break the boss very fast and do even more damage to that boss. And since it's flexible in the fact that it could be skill or ultimate skill, you could even do it on, you could even buff first, then use this skill with the buff, and then on top of that go into, like, let's say one of your third skill, like your ratio attack, and then do big damage and do big break damage too. So then you can possibly break the boss before you actually ult, and then you just go into your ult the very next turn, and then boom, you cook them. Now it also has a passive effect, of course, when you get the first limit break, which at the start bout increases own break damage by 20%. So even furthering the break potential capabilities with the character on top of that. So this is good for breaking the enemies. Now, of course, you can still put maybe a memory that increases his jujutsu or taijutsu damage, but I still feel like you're better off just going for break damage at that point if you don't have any of the SSR memories, because they're obviously in a different league. Now that we talked about obviously his skill priorities, synergies, and his memories, let's actually discuss why I evaluated this character at an A. So there's a little bit couple factors considering this character and why he has to be rated at an A and then even possibly drop to a B later on. One of the biggest issues is how he functions. So of course he has his passive, which is overtime, and if you don't get to the 9 turns, you're still doing significantly a little bit less damage than you should be doing with the character. So to actually get him in his top peak condition, you have to go to the 9 turns. That is a huge drawback. When you're trying to do end game content, you're not going to get to the 9 turn. 9 turns is crazy work. Like, the boss will most likely kill a big portion of your team by the time you get to the 9 turns, and then you won't have that really good damage output from this character unless he was in your 5th slot and you stacked your team with a bunch of tanks. But again, like I said, a lot of end game content is going to be revolved around nuking the enemies, and it's going to be feeling really weird to have this character in place there. Only way you can really kind of see it is if you probably use, like I said, Tank Gojo, like you use him as a taunt character. So that way he's taking all the hits for your entire team and stalling, right? And then that's the only way you'll probably see the Nanami. But even then, that's just not worth it. At that point, you might as well just build Gojo nuke and just nuke the boss, right? So I feel like that also hinders him. On top of that, there's not really a lot of good taijutsu buffers, only really jujutsu buffers. Like I said, that 9 turn thing is pretty heavy drawback. There's other characters that can do his damage and better with less drawbacks. I'll give you an example right now, and you can see him on screen, is Itadori Yuji. He's essentially a green attacker, and he's way better than Nanami because he gives himself all these buffs. He gives himself crit buff, he gives himself black flash rate increase. He basically does it all. Like, he's going to be ult spam nuking a lot more consistently than Nanami, and that's without any memories, you know? So I just feel like you can't really have him higher than Itadori. He has to be below Itadori, and Itadori is just a way better DPS than him, and even Itadori is not even at the top. So there's just no reason for me to put him in S while Itadori is literally like in S as well, right? They're just not on the same bracket. He's way higher than him, so Nanami definitely has to be lower value than the Itadori. I'll say one thing he does have over Itadori is the fact that he has an AoE nuke rather than a single target. But either way, Itadori is still doing way more damage, and he doesn't have any like drawbacks, if we're being honest. Like, Nanami's drawback is he has to wait 9 turns to get himself going with the extra buffs, and Itadori doesn't have to wait for that. He can straight away get all that good damage. That's how I see it. You might disagree, but I think that is the best way to look at it. And yeah, realistically, he's still a good, decent character in the beginning of the game. You can still use him. If you really like Nanami, you can use him until we get the other Nanamis. The other Nanamis are way better than this Nanami, but we won't get them for quite some time, so just keep that in mind. But like I said, this character is an A for me. He's okay. You can use him in some scenarios and get some use out of him, even in the beginning of the game. But once we start getting that end game content like Tower and stuff like that, you're just not going to really see him too often. There's just going to be better options, especially when later in the future we do happen to get Green Gojo, which shouldn't be too far off. He should be like roughly 5-ish banners away, because we got him like 2-ish months after the game's release, and he was literally OP, and he's still OP until now. So yeah, and he's Jujutsu, by the way, and Jujutsu obviously has an advantage over Taijutsu characters. Not that he's just Taijutsu, he's both, but like I said, he's going to be a way better green carry. So yeah, that's why I have him overall rated at an A, and he probably will drop to a B. That's my overall evaluation from that guy, and I appreciate you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.